1,872 earthquakes. 2 exceeded a magnitude 6.0. Continued unusual movement, global unrest, and more. Kick back, folks, and relax. This is your weekend report. Hey folks. I hope you have had an awesome week. I want to thank you for tuning in for the Earthquake Report. For the record, today is September the 11th, 2016. This video will speak of earthquake data spanning from September the 3rd through September the 9th. It was on this day in 1992, when a magnitude 6.4 struck Central Africa. The earthquake was centered about 155 miles southeast of Kabambo. At least 8 people were killed, 37 were injured and several buildings were destroyed. The earthquake was also felt over 526 miles away in Burundi. This is what's happening. Oklahoma experienced its largest earthquake on record. The earthquake that shook Pawnee, Oklahoma, on September the 3rd is now the state's largest on record, according to the U.S. Geological Survey, which upgraded the magnitude to a 5.8. The earthquake was previously pegged at a magnitude 5.6. But further analysis of the seismic recordings from the event found the quake size to have a bigger moment magnitude. Moment magnitude, for those interested, is based on the total energy released by the event, and is considered a more accurate measure of magnitude than that of the now rarely used Richter scale. A Florida man's vehicle catches fire after charging his Galaxy Note 7. Another Galaxy Note 7 has spontaneously exploded, and this time it has incinerated a Jeep. Less than 48 hours after a Samsung Galaxy Note 7 exploded inside a hotel room in Australia, another smartphone has burst into flames. Nathan Dornosher had returned home from a yard sale with his family when the Samsung smartphone set alight. The Galaxy Note 7 was left in the Jeep to charge with the air conditioning running, while Mr. Dornosher brought his newly purchased desk inside the house. Writing on Facebook about the incident, which took place in St. Petersburg, Florida, Mr. Dornosher explained, "We were planning on grabbing the dog and heading back into town. I went out to the car to grab my phone, which was on the charger, and when I opened the door I was greeted by flames." The South Korean firm said it was working to investigate whether there was any way it could repay the cost of the vehicle destroyed in the fire. "I personally believe the fire stemmed from the Note 7, however, I wouldn't put it past a Chrysler to spontaneously explode." The USDA admits weight loss not possible for people who don't like salmon. Washington. Stating that any attempt to slim down without it would be wholly ineffective, representatives from the USDA's Food and Nutrition Service admitted at a press conference Tuesday that weight loss is just not possible for people who don't like salmon. For anyone looking to get down to a healthy body weight, there is simply no viable option aside from making salmon a major part of your diet, so you'd better enjoy it, said spokesperson Marsha Donner, who explained that it is not enough to simply tolerate eating the fish, as any successful program to trim one's waistline requires consuming salmon with such regularity that the dieter has to really love the experience of eating it. Unfortunately, if you don't like salmon, no amount of exercise is going to counteract this fact and allow you to lose weight. And don't think you can make any substitutes like tuna or grilled chicken breast. That's not going to work either. If you can't eat salmon for pretty much every meal, you might as well quit now and embrace the size of your body the way it is. Donner added that dieters who also don't like almonds should be prepared to gain another 25 pounds. You can view these articles and more at our Facebook page. Feel free to zoom over there when you have a moment. You can find the link in the description. Alright. Earthquake report time. Here we go. As mentioned, we finished last week off with 1,872 earthquakes. This, along with today's and yesterday's quakes, brings our monthly total to 2,779. For historical reference, a year ago today, we clocked in 334 quakes. The strongest to strike the planet then was a 5.5 in Papua New Guinea. Once again, we were presented with an incredibly interesting week. We experienced unusual movement, powerful earthquakes, and as a result, we are yet again left wondering what will happen next. As previously stated, we registered 2 earthquakes that fell within or exceeded the magnitude 6 category. We will begin with a 6.3 that struck Russia on Monday, September 5th. This occurred in the Pacific Ocean, near the Commander Islands, which are part of Russia's Kamchatka territory. The epicenter was located at a depth of 8 miles, and just southeast of the village of Nikolskoye, on Bering Island in the Commander Islands chain. There were neither immediate reports of casualties or damage, nor a tsunami threat. We follow this up by a 6.1 that hit the Macquarie Island in Australia on Thursday, September the 8th. Initially this earthquake had registered as originating from central Otago, New Zealand. As it turns out though, this earthquake was deemed to be a ghost quake, which was actually centered more than 621 miles away care of the Macquarie Island. Gannett initially reported a magnitude 6.1. Quake had struck 18.6 miles southeast of Roxburgh, at a depth of 7.4 miles. At 9:48 a.m. it quickly became apparent there was no severe shaking in the area. One woman who lives near the reported epicenter stated, "I know nothing about it." Gannett later corrected the initial report saying the quake had struck west of the Macquarie Islands, which is about halfway between New Zealand, the Antarctica, and part of Australia. In total, we experienced 35 magnitude 5+ earthquakes strike the globe this past week. This was a slight decrease in registered quakes when compared to the previous week. As you would expect, these earthquakes were centered mostly along the Ring of Fire, with New Zealand seeing most activity. Over the past week, they registered 7 magnitude 5 earthquakes, the average magnitude being a 5.3. Also along the Ring of Fire, a magnitude 5.3 was experienced in North Korea on Friday, September the 9th. As many of you surely guessed, this was actually a nuclear warhead test. North Korea has confirmed it conducted its most powerful nuclear test to date, marking the 68th anniversary of its founding with a reminder to the world that it may be edging closer to developing a warhead capable of striking the U.S. mainland. Lord Barack Obama, who was briefed on board Air Force One by National Security Advisor Susan Rice, as he returned to the United States from an Asian holiday, said provocative actions by North Korea would have serious consequences. Right. Anyways, outside of the Ring of Fire, Ferndale, California registered a 5.6 on Saturday, September the 3rd. This quake occurred around 8:30 p.m. and registered a magnitude 5.6 with an epicenter about 73 miles west of Ferndale in Humboldt County. Thankfully, no reports of damage or tsunami alerts were received. Finally, even though we have talked about this ad nauseum, we must mention the powerful 5.8 that struck Pawnee, Oklahoma, also on Saturday, September the 3rd. We registered 100 magnitude 4 earthquakes. This was also a slight decrease when compared to the previous week. Seismic storms were limited to the usual locations like Japan, which clocked in 15 magnitude 4 earthquakes, New Zealand with 9, Indonesia with 8, and Alaska with 6. The most notable earthquakes include a 4.0 that struck Honolulu, Napuapu, Hawaii on Tuesday, September the 6th, and a 4.0 that hit Whitehall, Montana, on Saturday the 3rd. People in Whitehall felt a rumble Saturday night as a 4.0 magnitude earthquake struck the area. The quake hit the north end of the Tobacco Root Mountains at around 5:44 p.m. Saturday and maintained its intensity along portions of State Highway 41 and in the Whitehall area. The quake could have been felt as far away as Butte and Deer Lodge to the west and Bozeman to the east. The remaining earthquakes struck, for the most part, locations here in the States. We'll start with Hawaii, which registered 77 earthquakes, with the strongest being the previously mentioned 4.0 on September the 6th. Swarm activity was centered around the Pahela, which clocked in 24 earthquakes, and Honolulu, Napuapu, which registered 30. Alaska clocked in 374 earthquakes. The strongest to strike was a magnitude 4.8 that hit Atka on Wednesday, September the 7th. Washington registered 43. The most intense being a noteworthy 3.1 that hit Southern Valley. The average magnitude for all earthquakes to strike Washington was a 0.89. As for the Southern Valley earthquake, the U.S. had received nearly 140 responses via its citizen science reporting program. And as you know, an earthquake with a magnitude of 3 to a 3.9 is considered minor, and such quakes are often felt, but rarely cause damage. Oregon's earthquake activity, once again, remained largely unchanged when compared to the previous week's data. We experienced 14 quakes in total. The strongest registered was a 2.9 that struck Port Orford. California experienced a 5% increase in earthquake activity when compared to the previous week. This equates to roughly 714 earthquakes being registered over the past 7 days, and on a daily basis, roughly 102 being experienced. The most powerful recorded was the previously mentioned 5.6 in Ferndale. We followed that up with a 3.4 in Atlanta and a 3.2 in Mammoth Lakes. Swarm activity was limited to the usual locations. This includes Mammoth Lakes with 106, the Geysers with 69, and Cobb with 65. Nevada registered 168 earthquakes last week. The strongest experienced was a 3.1 that struck Alamo. Swarm activity was limited to the usual locations. Idaho registered 4 all week. The most intense to strike was a 1.7 in Chalice. Montana experienced 72 earthquakes. This is roughly a 60% increase when compared to the previous week. The most intense registered was the previously mentioned 4.0 that struck Whitehall. On an interesting note, we did experience a 3.3 in Whitehall 2 days after the 4.0 hit. Swarm activity was limited to Whitehall, which registered 37 over the week. Wyoming experienced a return to earthquake normal last week. 19 earthquakes were registered. The strongest recorded was a 2.3 that hit the Old Faithful Geyser. Utah raked in 10. The strongest reported was a 2.6 in Junction. Kansas once again experienced 7. The strongest being a 2.8 in Winfield. Oklahoma clocked in 72. The majority of which were aftershocks following the 5.8 on Saturday. In fact, 66% of the earthquakes experienced were aftershocks that rattled the Pawnee area. The New Madrid seismic fault experienced movement as well. This includes 6 earthquakes that hit Missouri. The strongest being a 1.6 in Lilburn. This also includes 6 earthquakes that struck Tiptonville and Ridgely, Tennessee. The strongest experienced in the Volunteer State was a 3.4 in Tiptonville. The North American Craton also experienced movement. This includes a 2.4 in Cherokee, North Carolina and a 2.5 that hit Seymour, Tennessee. Florida made the list, yet again. This being a 3.8 that struck just off the coast of Flagler Beach on Sunday, September the 4th. Chances are this was not so much an earthquake, but an experimental explosion caused the United States Navy. The reason being, this is the exact location in which we registered a 3.7 on July the 19th of earlier this year. This was confirmed, at that time, to have been an explosion. Our Canadian allies experienced seismic movement as well. 7 earthquakes in total. The most notable being a 2.5 in Princeton. Before wrapping up, I would like to take a moment and say our thoughts and prayers continue to go out to those who impacted by 9/11. One can debate who is responsible for the event, but one thing is for certain, people suffered greatly. And that's it for the earthquake report. If you experienced an earthquake today, or if you would simply like to chat, please post down below. I would like to hear from you. Feel free to post about anything that is on your mind. Make certain to like, subscribe, and share this video. Also, if you like the social media thing, you can link to us via the standard allotted social sites in the description. We'll end this report with a video feed from our favorite star.